Okay, hope this is going through okay. I have nowhere to monitor because I'm going straight off the iPhone. So, if you saw my post online, you saw that I got a new scope to play with my AstroAddict channel. Unfortunately, I don't have the other camera ready yet for the high quality imagery. So I'm just doing a test with a tethered, basically bolted on iPhone. It's a good quality iPhone, but it's not as good as a DSLR or mirrorless camera. So, right in the middle you can see Saturn, pretty clear tonight. I have a zoom eyepiece on here, which is kind of cool, so I can zoom in. I'm not sure how YouTube's camera will handle this, because the built-in camera app kind of freaks out a little bit, and auto exposure doesn't work very well with this kind of setup. A DSLR style camera app I use, as well as a couple other apps, worked quite well, but unfortunately when you stream to YouTube directly, you don't have an option of using another camera app. You have to use whatever they grab off of your hardware, so you can't really tweak the image that much. So, that is the story here. Hopefully it looks okay. It's very small, so it's going to be pretty sharp now, but I just want to explain, as I zoom in a little bit, you might start to, the autofocus may not work very well because YouTube, I assume, is doing autofocus. There's no manual setting here. So anyway, there's Saturn. Let's try a slow zoom on the eyepiece and see if it messes it up. It's holding up okay. You can definitely see the bulge. You can see the gaps in the ring from the planet, but it's not the control I would like to have. Let me zoom in a little bit more, and that's about it with this eyepiece. So not a bad view of Saturn if you haven't seen it before. How's it going, Synchrotron? So I'll stay here for a little bit. The one nice thing is with this new scope, I've never had a scope with a tracking drive on it to counteract Earth's rotation. So this view of Saturn has been holding for a good 30 minutes, maybe more. I wanted to test it for at least 10 minutes before I went online, and it's quite damn steady, so I'm pretty pleased with it. My typical scope is what you call a Dobsonian mount, so it's like a lazy Susan, alt-azimuth style, so you just kind of pivot and tilt, which is great for star parties, and you know the sky, and you're setting up stuff, and just point, you know, some got good at over the years just from doing it. It's not rocket science, but you just memorize objects in the sky just like you do looking at a world map and learning where all the countries are, where all the cities are, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so I always have to do that manually. So in a star party at a decent magnification, I'm constantly moving the scope because it's, you know, Earth is rotating very quickly. So as soon as you just zoom in a little bit, it's like, boom. So you have to reset the scope like basically every 20 seconds, at least to get an object fairly centered, so people don't know what. So what am I looking at again? So it was right in the center. Oh, it was in the center. Hold on. So the nice thing about this motor drive is it just counteracts the Earth's rotation for quite a long period of time. I mean, these are used for astrophotography, so you can use a guided photography method, or you can use a non-guided method. The old days, you'd sit there with a illuminated reticle eyepiece and a little paddle controller for your scope set on slow mode, not the fast mode, just a very slow, kind of a slew mode. And you just sit there and play the most boring video game ever, keeping that object in the center of the crosshair, sometimes up to 2 hours, because you're using old days of film. You could use pretty high ISO film, 1600. There was a famous black and white one for high-res images called 2415 Tech Pan that some friends used to use. I've never used any of this stuff. I played with the 1600 slide film a lot, but it was mixed results. Anyway, there's you can only go for so long before the film kind of peters out. It's called reciprocity failure. And all these things with digital make all that stuff go away now, so you don't have to worry so much. In fact, the new technique these days, or fairly new technique, is called stacking, where you can take anything as crappy as a webcam, which is real low quality, or new, better ones now, but people were playing with this back when webcams are not good, like an old Logitech or Quick Cam or something like that. Taking hundreds of images, running through a software that stacks them all and registers the images so they're perfectly aligned, and it, like a primitive type of AI analysis, that goes through and just basically it takes all the best parts of the images and makes an additive image. Kind of similar to how stuff in the old days, like Voyager probes would use and stuff. They would take tons and tons of shots and use computer processing to add up the images to get all that missing shot from every image that's maybe noisy or messed up, whatever. And you eventually build a composite image, not just from chunks, but also from layers. Pretty interesting stuff. The quality is quite good, even back then. So there's all these tricks now you can use, so you don't have to sit there and do some long guided session. You can do a bunch of like 5-second exposures or 20-second exposures or whatever your patience will allow. If your mount is not so good, you don't have to do so much guiding. You can still do the long guiding if you want. I know some people who do that, but the motor drives now on some of these things, and then the real high quality digital RGB cooled cameras, they're doing like photographic stuff that's, you know, textbook quality or publication quality, you know, for websites and magazines and stuff. But they also spend thousands and thousands of dollars on hardware, lots of hours of learning time, lots of hours of shots to build the stacks, because you have to do it in red, green, and blue filters. Stack those, then you have to take flats, which are basically black, you know, dark fields, to capture the potential blooming pixels in your CCD imager, to subtract those. You also have to take white fields to remove any dust that was on the thing. So you have to leave like a bright cap on your lens and just take a bunch of white fields. At the end of the day, you may only have taken a total of like 3 or 4 images for an entire night of observing and shooting, but you literally took hundreds of images, you know, or at least dozens of each object, you know, for a given night. So it's gotten better and easier over time, but to get the quality, you still need a lot of work to make it happen. So, and as you can see, Saturn has not moved, so the clock drive is still holding strong. This is zoomed in max on right now, and the problem with YouTube, as usual, is no customizing features. So I can't control the exposure. I can't control the zoom of the camera on, like digital zoom of the camera. I can only control my little zoom eyepiece here. So Saturn would normally look a lot smaller if you saw the beginning of the stream. Still could tell it's Saturn because it's a nice bulging object. It's not a dot and it's not a disk like something like Jupiter or Mars would have, where it's a bright, colorful disk of various shades. But it's not a bulging one. This is a clear bulging object. When you see it for the first time in the scope, you're like, oh, that's Saturn. You can't miss it. So anyway, this is as close as I can get now with this setup, at least to Saturn. So hopefully it looks okay on your end. Again, I have no quality control over it now, but if you're doing full screen, maybe it looks pretty good. If not, you can go on afterward and blow it up and see if it holds up image quality. But the seeing conditions tonight are pretty decent. You know, one of the old school kind of simple way to know if it's even worth looking at night, other than haze or clouds or, you know, any kind of other pollution, is are the stars twinkling heavily? If they are, you know, people like the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star song, but if it's twinkling heavily, that means you have a lot of atmospheric disturbance from various reasons. The turbulence from heat, turbulence from weather systems, all kinds of stuff. There's a lot of stuff I can't describe, but you can easily look it up in a meteorology textbook. But anyway, so the twinkling is a quick and dirty, like, oh, Yeah, if it's really twinkling heavily, it's probably not a good idea to go out and waste a bunch of time, unless you're just looking for fun. You know, out with your friends or out with a group of people sharing the night sky. Twinkling's fine. You're just not going to get good quality images, either visual or photographic. But if it's not doing that, it's generally pretty nice and steady. And tonight's actually kind of a cool night considering it's August. Objects are steady. There's a lot of light pollution here still where I am, so that's not great. It's not going to help looking for faint objects. But for the kind of stuff I'm going to show on this little camera on the phone, it's fine. It's, you know, once I put the better camera on here, once I get that all set up, you'll see the difference, because with this Meade astrograph camera, if you know anything about focal ratios and what they call fast optics, a standard telescope that you would buy, even a pretty big one that you'd see at a star party or at a showroom somewhere that sells telescopes, standard f ratio is around f10, and that's pretty slow. It's fine for visual, but for doing photography, you're going to have to do longer exposures, more stacking, higher ISO settings on your camera. In the old days of film, high ISO film, all kinds of tricks to get the most out of that limited exposure, because it's a slow optics. This is an f4 system, so very, very, very fast. It's a compact Newtonian design. So, you know, with the mirrors at the bottom and the primary mirror, the big mirror at the bottom, just like I have at the observatories you see around the world, the giant observatories. Giant primary mirror at the bottom, secondary mirror near the top, and that is the focal point, and optics shoot off of that to the side usually. So in this case, I'm hooking the iPhone to the side of the scope, near the top of the scope, because it goes down, bounces back, comes out the side. So it's a nice focal length, so it allows you to do a lot of magnification if you choose to. But most of these scopes, for probably about 300, maybe 350 max magnification. You could push it to 4 if you really wanted to, but you get into the real limit of the optics. And most objects you only need about 200 power anyway, just to see pretty well. This is a zoom eyepiece. I don't remember what setting it's on right now, so I can't tell you what magnification this is of Saturn at the moment. It's pretty good though. I think this is equivalent to about, let me think, assuming YouTube isn't messing up my view of it more than usual, this is probably equivalent to about I think maybe a 12 millimeter eyepiece, something like that, maybe 15 millimeter, something like that. So pretty good. Not, I mean, you know, if you start getting to 6 millimeter and further, it gets really, really magnified, and also very, very dark, unless you have a massive aperture on your thing. This is only an 8-inch Newtonian style, called the astrograph, because it's aimed at photography and very fast optics. The other telescopes in this class can have different designs. There's one called Schmidt-Cassegrain, where it's a shorter tube, and the light hits the primary mirror at the back, bounces the secondary mirror, and bounces back to the primary with a hole in it, and that's where your eyepiece is. So for some people, it's more comfortable to be at the back of the scope. It just makes more sense, and it's also more comfortable viewing angle, instead of kind of bending over a tube all the time on Newtonian. And then there's other kinds called Maxitoff-Cassegrain, which is like a hybrid of a Schmidt-Cassegrain kind of thing, but also kind of acts a little bit like a refractor, because it has, you know, different kinds of optics, curved corrector plates and all kinds of stuff in there. So, and then of course the refractor is the typical one you see, you know, the classic telescope you have on pirate ships is a refractor with just a series of lenses, not mirrors. The telescope's been around for a hell of a long time, hundreds of years. And that's the typical store-bought telescope. Is something I started with back in right at the end of high school. It's kind of when I got into astronomy more than before. And so, store-bought telescope. Took it outside. One of the first things I saw when I was really looking hard was actually Saturn, and it just blew me away. I was sitting there going, it looks like somebody just put a sticker of a picture of Saturn on my eyepiece. It just popped. It looked really clean. The detail was there. It just happened to be the right time of year when I saw it in its voyage around the sun to give us the right viewing angle, so you have the right tilt of the rings. So it looked really, really clear and really nice separation from the disk of the planet. And even my crappy little scope, I could easily see, the famous Cassini's division to break the rings up. So, and you can see, you can't really see it here because again, I can't control the exposure. But before I switch to this app, the app I was using before where I have total control of the optics, you could see stars around Saturn at this view. In fact, you could even see Titan. It looks like a small star next to it, but it's really the largest moon around it. But I don't see it here. Maybe later on, taking the video and doing some contrast adjustments, you might see Titan pop out, or maybe a couple stars in the background pop out. But it's pretty much a dark field right now because, again, I don't have control of the optics with YouTube, the exposure at least, and the zoom. And also by zooming in with one of the tricks of the zoom eyepiece, which is sometimes desirable to, if you zoom in, it actually cuts down the amount of light getting into your eye, which is good sometimes when you have a lot of background light and you want to just focus on a bright object with a dark field, or you're checking on a nebula how it kind of sits against the background, and you can zoom in and out. It kind of, you'll see the edges of the nebula kind of pop or not pop sometimes based on the type of nebula you're looking at and your conditions. But being darker, it's also bad because the fainter objects, the smaller stars, potentially some moons, if you're looking at a planet, might be obscured because you just cut down the light level. So it's a good and bad thing. But just for star parties, zoom optics are great because I don't have to change eyepieces all night and go, hey, you want a closer look? There you go. Let's go back to normal. Okay, there you go. See how much brighter it is? Isn't that cool? Then I go back to zoom in again. So it's really interactive, really fun, and they're not that expensive, really, compared to what you would think they would cost. So, anyway, so that's Saturn. We've been sitting here for a while. It's kind of boring. And I can't, like I said, I can't do much with the image. So I think I might still be able to get a look at Andromeda Galaxy. And I don't know if the phone's going to be able to even find it. So what I'm going to do, since I have my little go-to thing, it's not fully calibrated, so I'm probably have to do some manual adjusting here. But because I don't have the way this is set up, the phone is actually my eyepiece right now. It's blocking the eyepiece as it's tethered to it. I'm going to have to rely on the scope to find this. So let's go look and see. See if I can find. I mean, Neptune is right next to it, but this kind of condition, I don't think you're going to be able to see Neptune very well. So let's go look at. Jupiter's not available. Mars is not available. Moon is not available. Let's go back to mode. Here we go. Oh wait. Landmarks. Solar system. Let's go this one. And here we go. Galaxies. Let's go to Messier 31, which is Andromeda. Maybe we'll try a double star. Let's see how that resolves on YouTube. I'm curious. Eta Cassiopeia is kind of a nice little double star. Let's go to that one. That's an easy one to find. Now I have to quickly fix this because YouTube's complaining about the orientation. Okay. You annoying software. Why do you care about the orientation of the camera? Now I don't have a very bright object on there, so it's harder to center it. Fine. Yep, I almost got something. There we go. You can see the secondary mirror veins right there. I changed the focus. There we go. Now let me quickly change the zoom on this guy. Okay. Guys, tell me in the chat, do you see two objects there? It's really hard to tell on the screen. Anyone still there in the chat? It's like, I'm tired of that telescope crap. I gotta get out of here. Should be 2 point sources in there. Let me check the focus again here. Let me use the zoom eyepiece now. Get a little more close to them. Find focus here. Should see two objects there. Should be Eta Cassiopeia. I'm just not sure how the iPhone is resolving it. Unfortunately, let me see if I can pinch zoom on. Even though it doesn't broadcast it, I can pinch zoom here and just get an idea of what I should be sending out. Yeah, okay, it's there. Just get this focus fixed a little bit. So what you're seeing is, let me get the best focus I can here. I wish I could do contrast adjustment. And again, that's the problem with the damn YouTube app. If you make the image a little bigger, you'll notice there are two objects, left and right. Left one is a little more orangish, the right one's a little more whitish, yellowish. It's a binary star. It's called Eta Cassiopeia. So they name all the brightest stars in the constellation after all the Greek letters until they run out. And then they have other designations after that. So alpha obviously is the brightest, beta, gamma, etc., etc. So Eta is not super bright, but if you ever look up the constellation of Cassiopeia, which is like a W or an M based on how you look at it in the northern hemisphere, if you look at it as an M, the left peak of the M has a little star between the second and third stars that form that first peak. It's kind of offline a little bit. It's not, kind of gives the M a bulge, and that's Eta Cassiopeia. So if you're trying to find it in the sky. I wish I could image it better, but I wasn't expecting the best from stars. I was hoping I could at least find maybe a galaxy or so, but at least I found a double star here, and you got to see Saturn. So it's not a total wash. But I do want to quickly try to find Andromeda Galaxy because it is quite damn bright. It should be visible, at least on this damn setup. So now that you guys had a look at that, I'm going to zoom out and do a quick look for Andromeda Galaxy because it's quite bright. So let's give that a shot. Kind of tricky. I'm at a really bad angle, bending over, looking up in the sky on this little finding scope. What I should have done, actually, do I have that handy? I'm going to try that real quick. There's this really cool thing called it's based on tank technology, tank sighting technology for war called TELRAD. And I did get one to hook up and I forgot to plug it in. Come on, buddy. Get out of there. There's always something. Now I've got a thing blocking me here. That's not good. Come on, man. Just my luck. A piece of metal is blocking the exit of the finder scope now. That was bad planning. I'm stuck with the damn finder scope. Let's put it back. Well, this was supposed to be a test stream, so as advertised, plenty of goofs and unplanned stuff and weird nonsense going on. So, such is life. Yeah, so sometimes when you're playing with this stuff and figuring out kinks and troubleshooting stuff, it's about as exciting as recabling your studio. MIDI cables and audio cables. But, you know, it's all a mixed bag. And it's not resolving shit on the phone. Getting stars. Plenty of stars. Verify what this one is. So, galaxy's dead center in that field, and it's black. Wish I could make it better, but I can't. And that's one of the brighter galaxies. So, this is another good example why have to have a proper camera. Otherwise, it's not good. Oh, what's that just appeared above the building there? Hello. I wasn't expecting that. Only a few things look this bright. If you guys have ever seen an iridium flare, which is when the iridium communication satellites that are kind of defunct now go overhead at the right time, at the right place. So you have to plan the trajectory from your location on the chart. And when they come into view and go across the sky, they're stunning. About as bright as Venus, sometimes brighter. And they fade in and fade out as they go through the Earth's shadow. It's like a rheostat. Pretty stunning. Hubble's pretty bright too, but not nearly as bright as a iridium flare. So there's all kinds of websites and tracking software you can use to plan it for your location. And one of the guys in my astronomy club is cool. He loves satellites, so he does. One night he actually showed me geosynchronous satellites in a chain, which I had never bothered to look for before, but he knew exactly where to look. And once you find one or two of them, you can just go across the sky and you'll see, spaced out perfectly, the geosynchronous satellites. And it's just a trip. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, that's gotta be Venus. I see Venus during the day sometimes, you know, if it's big enough and the crescent is noticeable enough, you can actually see it during the day. But normally I just see it at night and in the early morning. So to see it this time of night is kind of unusual, but I'll have to give it a shot. Unfortunately, if I bend down, oh yeah, the building's still in the way, kind of. I can give it a shot though, what the hell, I've got nothing else to do. Let's see how close we can get before it hits the building. Well, my finder is realigned. Should be able to get it real quick in the finder scope. And it's at a comfortable viewing angle. I'll have to crane my neck and my back. Horrible positions. It's just below the building. Just below the building. Come on, wrong way. There you go. Okay, so there's Jupiter with some moons. And again, unfortunately, I cannot adjust the exposure, so you'll have to deal with the damn overexposed disk. But it is showing the moons, which is cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Too early in the evening for Venus. Has to be like early morning. So if you guys haven't seen Jupiter before, there's Jupiter with a couple moons. I'd have to get the moon chart out to know which is which right now. So, what was it? Back when I went to NAM, and I had my scope in the car, and I actually had just enough time to do 2 nights at Yosemite. The first night was very clear and just beautiful. Second night was cloudy and unpleasant, but that's what you get when you go in the off season. Normally summer is really good up there for astronomy, but anytime spring, early summer, spring, and other seasons where it's bad weather and snowy up there, you're pretty much out of luck. But they had, I didn't even plan this, and I've seen shadow transits before, but I actually got a shadow transit of Ganymede across the planet. It was finishing when I got there. I didn't see the whole transit, but it was really cool because you could see the shadow and then as the moon peeked out of the planet, you could still see the shadow, and then quickly the moon continued going out, and then the shadow was gone. So it's kind of a fun event to see that. And I didn't have this kind of a scope that has a motor drive on it, so I'm having to constantly move the scope as the Earth is rotating. But being used to that, it's not that big of a deal. But if you're with a group of people, you have to constantly adjust it. It just drives them crazy. So what's nice about this is I can just set this, and it will pretty much hang here for as long as I want it to. Let's try to get a fine focus on those moons so they're a little sharp. So yeah, if you just go to any web page, it has Galilean moons, as they're called, the 4 giant moons of Jupiter. It'll tell you the order of the moons right now. I have a couple apps on my phone that will do that too. They're quite nice, but unfortunately I'm using the phone to shoot this, so I can't look it up right now. And my iPad's not right next to me, so I'm flying blind. But it's okay. You don't always have to know exactly what they are. But it is fun to know. And I think I'm only seeing 3, unless one is bulging, like this kind of horrible image. And by the way, you can see this view with decent pair of binoculars. 10 by 50s, 9 by something or other, even 8s. You can definitely see the disk, the equatorial belts barely, and definitely see the moons on the sides. So you don't need a big telescope or even a medium telescope to see this kind of stuff. You can take a look at pretty much most of the major planets and see them and see their color, and in this case see the moons and stuff. So it's pretty impressive. Just carry around a pair of binoculars and you can see quite a bit of stuff. Let's see who else is in the chat here. I'm fiddling with the scope too much and not chatting. We got, God, the text is so small on the screen. I got Paul here. How's it going, Paul? The original synth, how's it going? Who else is here? Looks like we got somebody else I'm not familiar with. Got some new names in here. Cool. Yeah, sorry for if you were watching the earlier part of the stream. Yeah, like I said, it's a test stream. I'm just figuring this new gadget out. I literally just got it today. Hooked it all up, calibrated it, read some stuff here and there, learned about the, just verify the collimation procedure for the primary mirror is the same and secondary mirror is the same as the stuff I'm familiar with. And just getting used to it came with a battery pack, but the barrel connector doesn't fit the power block in the clock drive. So I kind of wonder what the fuck the battery pack was for. Not a big deal though, because it also came with a 12-volt car cord, which I can buy a nice battery pack that plugs into, and have an entire night's worth of power or more. Just a little brick that you put on the ground. Those are good too because they also have USB chargers in them sometimes, and like a little light, like a red light for when you're looking for your stuff at night. And when you're all done and nobody cares about the bright lights in your face, you can have a white light you can turn on to sweep the area, make sure you didn't drop anything. Because we often go to remote sites to set this shit up, and last thing you want to do is leave something significant or expensive behind when it's many-hour drive from home. But yeah, no, it's a fun little device. It's fairly heavy, as I moved it as a single unit downstairs, which was crazy because if I tripped I would have been dead. but it's about 75 pounds altogether. Tripod, motor mount, and scope. But I have a kit coming for these padded bags, so you can break it down to 3 units. So it stores well, travels well, protects the unit, and much easier to transport in 3 pieces than in one giant piece, obviously. But I didn't want to do it all and reset it up downstairs and all that shit. It was just a pain in the ass. Since this is a test, this is all quick and dirty. See what happens. So you can see that Jupiter's already moved a good, what is that about? Not quite 10 degrees since I started looking at it. And it's still nicely tracking in the scope. So as advertised, this is one of the reasons these things are great for showing and talking about stuff, for photography. And the motors are pretty good now, unless you're doing some really detailed stuff or high magnification stuff, or super long picture, exposures. You shouldn't need to do guiding like you used to in the old days. You still can, but it's kind of pointless, especially since the modern DSLRs and mirrorless cameras are so damn sensitive. And then with this super fast astrograph and those super fast, high sensitivity cameras, that's the magic formula. And that's why I'm able to get ready. What I'm going to do shortly here is do proper live streams of things on the show. For a certain extent, I'm not expecting to do everything live. I might have to do like 5-second exposures, or maybe up to 20-second exposures of certain things or more. But in a live stream, that's okay. You guys can sit and wait for a few minutes, or at least half a minute or so, to see an image that might be pretty cool. So it's almost like a real-time star party, but with a little bit of time taken for time exposure, just so you can get the details to pop. Because even with the 30,000 ISO or whatever you set your camera for, and the f4 optics, it's still really hard to get some of this stuff to be real time. But it's close enough. Anywhere from 10-15 seconds to a minute. It's not too long to wait for an image, and then the image can be up for a while and talk about it, and so it's still a pretty dynamic presentation, and people can ask questions. I'll be since I won't be on my stupid phone like I am now, I can monitor the chat better while I'm taking images and stuff. The only trick is if I do this remotely, I have to worry about tethering, and sometimes tethering on YouTube is not the best thing. It needs some decent amount of bandwidth, so that might be a little tricky. I'm not worried about the images and the scope part, but I'm worried about the glitches on the stream. Since it's not a video stream per se, it's more about looking at still images, because basically the scope is tracking the objects that are basically still images. Right now, you can't even tell that things are moving because it's tracking. So having high quality video at this point is kind of pointless, as long as each individual image is good enough. So if I can get it to tether on a laptop, and or even on an iPad potentially, then I can have more control over the quality of the images and not worry so much about the frame rate, because these are just still images. We're not watching meteors with it, and we're not watching, things take a long time to rotate at this scale, so there's no action really. So yeah, it's just a dynamic slideshow with semi-live images. But that's kind of all it is when you go to a star party. You go to a star party, look at 10, 15 different telescopes. You're going to see just a bunch of literally still images in someone's scope, And you're not even going to see what you expect to see in pictures. You're going to see fuzzy, faint, sometimes hard to tell what the hell you're looking at images. No color, unless it's a star or double star or planet or something like that. You're not going to get any color because, you know, at low light, you're basically relying on your rod cells in your eyes, which are black and white. Your color cells, the cones, need a lot of light. You're just not going to see it. So that's what's great about imagery, is you can take a quick and dirty picture and have basically a semi-live, you know, live at that moment image of that object with some color and maybe some details you just wouldn't see naked eye, or, you know, eye on eyepiece kind of view. So I think it'll work out pretty well. See how it goes and people like it. Just essentially just a virtual star party. Just the only difference is you're getting better images because I'm taking time exposures instead of using your eyes. Because I love looking at stuff naked eye, or, you know, assisted eye with eyepieces. But it took a while to get used to looking at the stuff without the color and the nice structures and all that kind of stuff. It's just, you're happy to see what you can see because that's just the way it is. And even in the best scopes, you're not going to see a whole lot more. It's just the limitation of your biology. But yeah, once you get past that, it's fine. But so many people at these star parties have in Yosemite and stuff, they just complain like, oh, what's that? I don't see anything. Oh, you see that thing? You have to basically describe it. Oh, look, see that smudge on the lens? Yeah. Well, that's it. Oh, I thought that was just a smudge. It's like, well, that's kind of what it looks like sometimes. And, you know, it's not the fault of the optics or anyone else but your own biology. So if you want to blame anybody, blame your own eyes. So just the way it is. We're not nocturnal animals. We're primarily diurnal animals, potentially crepuscular, you know, dawn and dusk animals. But our eyesight fails us pretty easily at night. You know, we have lights everywhere. I mean, we need lights to see. Now, I got pretty good dark adaptation from all these years of astronomy. So as long as I get enough sleep and got, you know, good nutrition, vitamins and stuff like that, I'm pretty good. I can actually see, once my eyes have adjusted, I can see really well at night. I don't need a flashlight anywhere. I'm just walking around doing what I have to do. And then somebody puts a light in your face and you go, great, thanks. Now I got 20 minutes more to regain my night vision. Yeah, so it's just stuff you have to get used to when you do this stuff. It's not, you're not going to see the pretty pictures you see in books. I mean, the planets look pretty damn good, but even they don't look as good as those time exposures and the probe shots and the up-close processed images and all that kind of stuff. So once you're okay with that, you're used to that, it's fine. You know, it's just what it is. Some people just don't like it. They go, this is boring. I can't look at this. I only want to see beautiful pictures. It's like, oh, that's fine, you know. But there's something special about looking at, even though you're not looking at it necessarily live, right? Because the stuff you're looking at is traveled long distances at the speed of light. So some of these objects, you know, they're not gone because they know they're not gone. But some of these technically could be gone by the time you're looking at it. And it takes a long time to know that they're gone. Like the sun basically could start to dim significantly, or you know, start to go red giant early, even though it's not supposed to. But weird things can happen. And if it suddenly starts to do that, we wouldn't know about the catastrophe for, you know, 6 to 7 minutes, maybe a little more, because of the speed of light and the distance involved. So just the sense of scale and the sense of interesting structures, and you can see physics in action. It's not just static objects. It's a pretty rewarding discipline to study, even just for fun, just a gee whiz level. You don't have to go crazy with astrophysics and get your slide rule out and your fancy calculators and do all the math, and still have a good old time. But hey, it's just like everything else. You know, your mileage may vary, and some people just, if it's not like as they imagined it with picture books and movies and stuff like that, they're just not interested. So the goal is when we do these star parties for groups and stuff is, you know, get people as interested as you can. Some people you're not going to change their minds, and that's just the way it is. But it's really rewarding when you see how many people really do dig it. Either had no experience with it, and the tourists coming through looking at, hey, what are you guys doing? You know? And we show them, and they're just like, whoa, hey, wow, wow. They're just totally blown away, right? Like you would think you were like when you first did this stuff, if you're into this stuff, you know. And so that's enthusiasm they have, even adults, not just kids. It's really cool. It just makes you know, have some hope for humanity, because people actually have curiosity and actually give a shit about something other than social media and TV shows and other nonsense and politics. So it's a real kind of a great leveler. You know, just like people watching fireworks. They don't know how they work. They don't know all the chemicals going on in there, all the equations that make the beautiful physics properties of the different layers of complex that they built to make the fireworks actually work. They just watch the beautiful show and the sounds and it's awe-inspiring stuff. And it can kind of make astronomy feel the same way. So at least that's the goal. Get people interested in it, and maybe they'll actually care about funding science programs and doing more stuff in space. It's starting to drift a little bit now, so probably because I think my alignment was off, and probably because it's been a while. So get this lined up again so you can see all the moons there. So yeah, imaging on YouTube with an iPhone is definitely not wonderful, but this is about as good as it gets with this setup, just because I have no control over the camera in this mode. If you saw some stuff I was doing earlier before I streamed with manual software on the iPhone with the camera, is a hell of a lot better. Saturn looked really nice. And it wasn't even just a fancy. I mean, this is a nice new iPhone 14 Max, or 14 Plus Max, whatever the hell it's called, the fancy one. So it is a good set of cameras and software on board, but YouTube is the great leveler. You know, it's just like the most basic stuff. You can't change the exposure. You can't change the like the ISO rating of your camera, brightness, contrast, none of that stuff. It's just automatic. Even the standard iPhone app for camera doesn't work too well in this config, because it's expecting something different. If you start blocking the lenses with some weird stuff and the light levels change too much, it starts jumping around trying different lenses. So you have to use dedicated programs that know how to use the cameras correctly, and you can set your f-stop and your ISO and your shutter speed and all that kind of stuff, manual focus. So it's really nice to have that. Yeah, but all things considered, this looks okay. Yeah, at least you can tell what this is. Like if you've looked at Jupiter before in any kind of scope or binoculars, you would know immediately this is Jupiter. Once you see those, you see the nice bright sphere, and you see those in any of the moons, just even one, will be like, oh yeah, that looks like Jupiter. Because I'm not even seeing the equatorial belts now, because it's just too blown out. I wanted to stop it down and actually show you the cool little equatorial belts that are real distinct at this kind of magnification, but just can't do it. So what's up, Matt? Got a few other people trickling through here. If you missed earlier what I was chatting about, so we saw Saturn a while ago. I first started the stream on Saturn because it looked pretty good. Trying to look at a galaxy that's really bright, but it just wasn't working at this setup. The phone wasn't resolving it. It's Andromeda galaxy, so that was a wash. I saw a double star in Cassiopeia, which wasn't resolving wonderfully, but you could still see two objects there, and some color differences. And then now we got Jupiter. So, I don't know. I think it worked out okay. But I was having a lot of technical issues earlier. I just got the scope, just set it up. It was calibrating it earlier and playing with it and learning the controls and the quirks and stuff in it. It's the first time I've actually bought an equatorial mount scope. And I've used big ones in observatories, but at this scale, you just want to be able to grab the scope and just kind of whip it around like I do with my other scope that I use all the time for star parties. That's just a full manual scope, no clock drive. And I sometimes I don't want to wait for this thing to rotate and sit here and do its thing, so it gets frustrating. But once you get it lined up and you can use the go-to thing, it has like 30,000 objects in the database. So if you don't know anything about astronomy, but you can set up the scope based on the instructions and carefully get it all configured, you can have your own star party over and over and over again at night by just hitting the button, like, go to this galaxy, go to this object, go to this star cluster, go to this. There's even a what is this mode, which I've actually used on another scope before that was more primitive. But again, when you configured it correctly, it's pretty good. It'll actually, if you have no idea what you're looking at, it'll actually tell you, oh, that's this star, or that's this galaxy, or this whatever you have it under the, as long as it's centered on the thing. So it's also an educational tool, not just looking at stuff you're familiar with. You can learn new objects. Like, what is this? I haven't seen this one before. I don't know this part of the sky at all. And it'll tell you, which is kind of cool. It also tracks events. They have comets in the database. It has asteroids in the database. Stuff like that. So if your conditions are good, and you want to take a crack at finding an asteroid, which is kind of tricky without a star map to know exactly what you're looking at, because it all looks like little dots, little stars. You can't tell an asteroid from a star without watching it over successive nights or using a star chart that tracks it really well, because at that scale they all look the same. Just like looking at Pluto. Pluto is such a small dot, you can't tell it's a planet without, incredible ground-based telescopes on a mountain somewhere, but you can definitely see it. It's usually around like 11 to 12 magnitude, which is pretty damn faint, but you can do it. This scope will do it. It could see Pluto if I wanted to. But again, it's nothing to look at unless you have a chart and you know exactly which one it is. Because even if the scope says you got it, you should always double check a chart. And magazines always have the charts, and websites as well. The current charts, if you're looking for a certain hard to find object or planet, whatever, or in this case, dwarf planet, because it got demoted. Good old Neil deGrasse Tyson. So yeah, lots of fun stuff. Got to see some of my trials and tribulations with this gear. Part of it was just because, I did such a quick alignment to get this going. I didn't, and it wanted me to align some stars I couldn't even see because the buildings are in the way. So I did a best dead reckoning alignment that I could, and then tried to overcompensate for the offset with my knowledge of the sky. And just, again, buildings are blocking my view. Seeing conditions aren't quite as good as they were in certain parts of the sky. I still can't see Andromeda naked eye right now, which I normally could. I could see it in the finder scope. That's how I knew I was pointing it out earlier, but it would not show up on the phone. The phone just could not resolve it. It's too faint. So all the more reason to get that camera set up that I was talking about. It's going to take a little while. But chat here. The text is so small on the screen. My eyes are fried. So yeah, I was saying before, this is about as good as I can get with this rig. Get the little pinpoints of the Galilean moons here around Jupiter. But problem is, I mean, it's nice you're getting the moons, because normally when you expose for the planet, you most likely lose the moon, a really good view of the moons. You might barely see them. But it's kind of nice to see the planet, because you want to see the equatorial belts and the different colors, and the fact that it's not just I mean, it looks, even at this scale, it looks kind of like a gas giant. It doesn't look like a solid rocky mass, because it isn't. It's a very live, dynamic structure. It's really interesting. And I've looked at incredible detailed views with friends, really nice scopes in really pristine conditions. And like, you could just, like, there's the famous Great Red Spot, which is just below one of the equatorial belts. And in the right conditions, you can zoom in and get these super sharp images of the different layers, the multiple belts that are up and down on the planet, and these swirling eddies and currents and stuff in the storm systems. Is just really fascinating stuff. There's some good simulators at science museums that show the fluid dynamics of how they form and how they get their crazy shapes and swirls and stuff as the planet is rotating. And because the planet rotates every 9 hours, you know, it's like, it's, you know, we take forever to rotate compared to some of these things. And also, we're so much smaller. I mean, the Great Red Spot's like 3 Earths across. And so Jupiter's just this huge, massive thing spinning way the hell faster than we are. So it's got all these really interesting swirling bits all over it. Now it's actually getting windy. It's cold and windy out here. Doesn't feel like summer at all. So I'm going to pack it in shortly, guys, because it was fun to show a few things off and, you know, show the limitations of this rig. You know, you can do some stuff with. It's a pretty nice scope that I got a good deal on, but without a proper camera, like your eye sees stuff in here just fine. It's a beautiful scope for observation, but you hook a really nice camera to it. It's really cool to get some great images and stuff. So, like I said, that's my next step. So be on the lookout for live stream stuff. I'm trying to move the live streams to. It's kind of funny. I have this addict theme. So I have AstroAddict, MicroAddict, and SynthAddict. There's already an AstroAddict who's well established. He's got, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 thousand subscribers or more, something like that. And it's a nice channel. He has some really good, he knows his stuff. He's got a lot of nice equipment, and he's definitely a pro. But, you know, he's just mainly doing, like, stuff on high-end photography and setups and showing off his pictures and talking about other kinds of tech gear and stuff like that. But he doesn't do any live streams. And I really wanted to do, you know, ever since pandemic fucked up a lot of the events. Like, I haven't been to a star party at Yosemite for probably 4 years now, because pandemic and other issues come along with fires and stuff. So the fun times at the star parties and the camaraderie and the meeting people and just being out there doing the stuff has been, I've had to do it on my own a bunch of times, just low key, just doing it myself. And it's more fun to do it as a group, not just from friends in the group and sharing ideas and learning about new scope stuff and new objects to look at that you didn't see before, stuff like that. But also just the way the interacting with the public, which is in those circumstances usually really, really positive. And like I said, gives you hope for humanity. So I miss those, and I thought a live stream online would be kind of a fun way to fake it and be able to share it with people in even other countries who are interested if they happen to find the channel. And it's not, it's not going to be quite the same, obviously, as a real star party with touching the scopes and asking questions and all that kind of stuff. But you get a similar experience where it's, I'm going to have a certain amount of things I'm going to show, but I'm also going to open it up to requests if people want to see certain things. As long as it's up, obviously, as long as the scene conditions are good enough to see it. And because, as you saw with this camera here, the iPhone, it's very limited in what it can resolve from the scope. Even though the scope can get beautiful images, it needs a little bit of time exposure. Because even a DSLR can't get great shots right out of the scope without some time, like 5 seconds or something like that. So you need the motor to be going like it's going now. You need or guide it with a little extra precision if you need that, and you got to let it go for some time, So it's but luckily with the good optics and the good scope, very fast optics in the scope, it's quick enough, like I was saying, to do a pretty dynamic live stream with captured images, just captured on the spot, posted. And you can zoom in on them and analyze them. You maybe do a quick Photoshop stuff here and there on the fly, whatever works at the time. But the point is, it's as live as you can get without being there, and it's just educational, fun stuff, and sharing nice images of the skies. And some of the special, I'm a big galaxy guy. That's why I have a big light bucket scope. It's a 12-inch Newtonian reflector scope, big old light bucket, and it's awesome for galaxies and bizarre, faint nebulae and things with like gas tendrils and all kinds of elaborate structures. And you can photographs actually do a better job, of course, but it's shocking how much you can see with your eye and a nice telescope in the right conditions. Again, you're missing the colors, but you're still seeing structures, and you're still seeing you get an idea of the shape of stuff, and it's really special to be able to see this stuff because it's so far away. They understand most of what's going on to make these things happen, but some things are still a little bit mysterious. And just the scale, the fact that it makes you feel really, really small. Sometimes you need to be put in your place and realize that don't sweat all the small stuff because we're such an insignificant part of the entire cosmos. And it's good to be reminded of that once in a while. And my bottle of water got really cold. It's gotten cold out here. So, get some last looks at Jupiter here. You guys just got here. And again, this is the best thing I could do with the iPhone tonight. Can't get a better image right now. But gives you an idea. Oh, look at that. Satellite just went through. That was cool. Hope you guys caught that. Watch the replay. Perfect little satellite went right through. So, and it's cool if you're doing this. If you're doing photography, it's a nuisance. You get a nice line through your picture. It kind of fucks up your pictures. So, I like it when it happens here, but photographers hate satellites ruining their shots. So yeah, like I was saying, keep your eyes open. I was going to try and stream this from my AstroAddict channel, So I have to go by AstroAddict. I don't know. It's in my YouTube post, and it's also in my my Facebook post and Instagram. I put up the actual name is AstroAddict6313 or whatever the hell it is, because the original AstroAddict will just take you back to that guy's channel, which is a different animal altogether. Mine's going to be, and you can tell my avatar, his avatar is the Whirlpool Galaxy, which is an awesome object. My avatar is the Andromeda Galaxy. So if you know what those two look like, you'll know immediately which is mine and which is his. I think there may even be one other AstroAddict on there as well. That's the funny thing about YouTube is you can have the same name and it just appends a number to your name. But I like the theme that I'm keeping with all the other channels I have, so it's okay, I don't care, it's the same as someone else's name. Because my avatar is different and my content will be different, and so, but I wasn't able to stream from the phone on that tonight because one of the limitations YouTube has, you can't mobile stream on like a mobile platform like iPad or iPhone from your device unless you have more than 50 subscribers. And since I did a test thing on AstroAddict about a year ago, maybe 6 months ago, with just iPhone, older iPhones, crappier iPhone, and a spotting scope, just to give you an idea that you can do some of this stuff with really low-tech stuff, but the image quality is very bad and just really not worth it. But it was just another experiment to try. So now I have really good telescope, better iPhone, but still just doesn't deliver, especially on YouTube. If I shot this on video on a custom app and then uploaded later, it would look a hell of a lot better because I have total control of the image with other apps. YouTube just does not let you do that. It's just assuming automatic control of your camera. Oh, we know all the best settings for you, don't worry. And you know, the only reason I can do this is because I have a zoom eyepiece on my scope. You can't zoom when you're inside of YouTube, which is another thing I hate. You're just basically stuck with whatever you got. It makes sense if you're walking around doing stuff, you're not going to be zooming, but oops. I'm going to show real quick. I can go a little bit closer with the zoom eyepiece. So, yeah, actually quite a bit closer. It is closer than Saturn, so it's definitely a bigger image than Saturn was giving me before. So, yeah, that's about max I can go right now. This would be a good test of the drive too, just to see how well it tracks with more magnification. You'll probably see a little bit of drift. And unfortunately, I really can't adjust the damn exposure anymore. Focus it a tad bit. So it's not, maybe not quite as sharp when I do this, but it's a bigger object. Get a more appreciation for the stuff, but it's overexposed so much you're not seeing the equatorial belts like you should. I bet if you took the video afterward and played back with some YouTube add-ons that let you do some contrast adjustment, you'd probably see a little bit more, but right now it's kind of washed out. But it's, yeah, this is the limit of a phone on YouTube. Like I said, if I shot this on as a standalone video on a custom app on YouTube, on the iPhone, it would look really nice, actually. But still nowhere near as good as a proper DSLR or a mirrorless camera. Because it's just not, the sensor's too small and the settings are, it's a much noisier camera. It's not designed for the suit. They do low light night shots, but they have some tricks in there to give you some better stuff. I actually took a picture, I should put it online, but I was hiking the other day, one of my favorite natural areas, and these black-tailed hares were running around. It's like a giant rabbit, like, you know, the Bugs Bunny's basically a hare, right? He's a big rabbit. And the local black-tailed hares were running around, and they're just fun to watch. There's huge ears, and they're just really active and fun, and they're really busy toward the end of the day when it's starting to get dark. So I was shooting some real low-light shots of them in the grassland, and zoomed in and just hoping for the best. And I was shocked the new iPhone not only captured them, but also it seemed to do one of those stacking tricks where I saw a little bar graph show up, and it was doing something for a bit until it finally took the shot and then went to the final image after I hit click the exposure. And it turned out really, really well. And I know there's no way that turned out live like that, because I was having trouble getting a sharp focus and also getting the right contrast taking the picture. But the intelligent software built in now for low light and sketchy photos is a hell of a lot better than it used to be. So that's good, but it still just can't compete with a bigger sensor, better noise response, and just pure DPI. You know, the more pixels. So I'm looking forward to getting a much better camera, and then I can really make this rig shine. Because as you saw earlier, I can't even do one of the brightest galaxies you can see. Oh shit, the moon just came up too. Now this will be nice. See, I didn't even plan this tonight, so I didn't know the moon was going to be up tonight. Let's give a little bit more time to Jupiter. I'm glad I waited. I'm sitting here loitering, and some nice things happen. Although my iPhone might start to die pretty soon because it's been on for a while and it's also cold out here. So, not me. I can't move the scope, but it's creeping out from behind a building. Same where you guys know about the ecliptic, I'm sure. The plane of our solar system, just like the plane of our galaxy, you know, it's pretty much a flat disk. So you have everything orbiting around the sun at roughly this kind of thin layer, except for weird stuff like Pluto, which is at an angle. It's like, I think it's like 20 degrees off the 20 degrees tilt off the ecliptic, which was kind of weird. Again, probably because it was disturbed by other things. That just like the same thing that basically made the Uranus go on its side, and like Neptune, just weird rotations of some of the bodies out there. There's some crazy stuff that happened at some point that made a lot of the stuff in the outer solar system behave really strangely. Excuse me. Anyway, so in the ecliptic, that's how you can find stuff in the sky really easily, since it's essentially a flat plane extended out into the sky. If you found the moon, or you found Jupiter, or you found Venus, or whatever, if you pay attention to where that was and you trace an arc through the sky, you'll always find the planets on that path. Now they're also roughly on the zodiac, but they're not completely, which is why, I don't know if people are into astrology, but astrology used to be a pretty big deal, because in the old days, astrology was astronomy. And at some point, astrologers and astronomers went totally different directions. And so when you say, Jupiter is in the house of Libra or something like that, or in the house of Scorpius, something like Scorpio, but Scorpius is the constellation. But then you go, oh, it's actually in Ophiuchus. That's not a zodiacal constellation. How does that work exactly? So, I mean, they don't exactly follow the ecliptic doesn't exactly go inside the zodiac, but it's pretty close. But because the And I think at one point it was closer, just because over time things spread and change. You get precession and stuff. Things spread out a little bit and change positions, just like the stars are changing positions. You have to get a new star catalog every 50 years because they moved enough that they're not quite in the same place anymore. But anyway, so these people are making all these claims about how important the constellation, the zodiac, is to your everyday life and determines your life and everything. But I mean, if you're telling me a planet is controlling my life and it's in this constellation, but then if you go into the sky and you say it's not even in any of those constellations, it's not in the zodiac at all right now, it's straight into some other constellation that's not part of the zodiac. I mean, they can't count for that. They can't figure out what the hell's going on there because they don't even know. They don't do astronomy. They just do astrology, which is old-fashioned, superstitious stuff, you know. I just think it's really funny because if you follow astronomy at all, and you know about the ecliptic, you know about the zodiac, and you know about the path of the planets, you know that they're not always in the zodiac. And you go to the horoscope in the newspaper and say, blah, 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 so-and-so, this planet is here in the house of blah, blah, blah. And I go, yeah, no, it's not. Go outside and look. It's not there right now. It's in a different place. Your data is faulty. So, and it's a whole crazy thing anyway. I think I might have killed enough time to see the moon. Not quite. Let's give it another maybe 10 minutes. Pop out from the building. But I know people who, you know, I don't give them too much of a hard time because they're nice people, but, you know, I just think it's all bullshit and people use it to sell you crap and convince you can change your life from some horoscope and all that kind of nonsense. It's another version of crowd reading, just like the charlatan psychics do, and how to crowd read people and get them to give them money to give them special information and pay them for tchotchkes and all kinds of stuff. It's basically a criminal element. Whether they like it or not, it's not right. But yeah, to a certain extent, if it makes people feel better and they're not harming anybody, I guess whatever. But to be brainwashed to think that you know, where Jupiter is right now is affecting your life when it's, you know, I forget some of the numbers, but I think it's 35 astronomical units from here. One astronomical unit is from here to the sun, 93 million miles. I think Saturn is 45 AU, Jupiter's like 35 AU, something like that. And then all the other ones are way the hell out there, way beyond that. You're going to tell me something that's that many million miles away that's really strong if you're near it. Like, you can get basically screwed up from the radiant energy, especially radio waves and stuff, emitted by Jupiter if you're near it. Some of the readings are off the chart. In fact, if it were massive enough, it would be a brown dwarf star. It's just not massive enough to do that, but it's huge, and it's got the right kind of complement of gases and stuff that it could actually start fusion like any other star if it had just a little bit more mass. Anyway, so to say something that far away, which is just a gas giant, essentially a star, has something to do with you in your daily life. It's like, well, what about the sun? The sun is way more powerful than anything else in the solar system, and nobody seems to say anything about that in the horoscope. It's just the planets. It's completely ridiculous. I just don't get it. You know, I've always been a science person, so I will always not get that stuff. But like I said, I know plenty of people who are into it and mean well and are nice people, but it's just, I can't get into it. And I'm not overly mean to them, but sometimes I just can't take it seriously. And they start spouting off all this stuff that just doesn't make any sense, and there's not even any empirical evidence for it at all, not even the most basic stuff. It's just conjecture and decades of, centuries of just fooling people, which is, you know, if that's what you're into, that's fine, I guess, but I'm not into grifting and lying to people and stuff like that. It's just, I mean, everyone lies on a certain level just to stay alive, but that kind of intentional stuff, especially to gain favor, to make money and stuff, is just pretty distasteful. Let's see. So yeah, it's holding pretty well, even though I zoomed in. See, Jupiter's still holding. It's gone off a little bit, but tracking's working pretty well. And again, I haven't totally nailed this. I didn't polar line it 100%. I didn't calibrate the tracking 100%. So it's off a little bit, and it's still doing a pretty damn good job. Let's see, I think the moon is visible now. Let's give it a shot. Let's do a little zoom out so you can see the original size. And I'm just going to eyeball this since it's not too far from the object. Ooh, nice. It's right by the Pleaides. That is so cool. Let's go to the Pleaides first. Let's see if they show up. Pleaides is a minor, like a mini constellation in a constellation. It's right next to Taurus, and it's named after the seven sisters of Greek mythology. And it looks like a tiny little dipper shape. It's called a little dipper sometimes. And let's see if it shows up on the phone here. Yeah, kind of. There's some brighter members. It's really an interesting object. It's big, so it's not going to all show up in here. And in the right conditions, the right kind of camera and stuff, you can see nebulosity around the stars, because it's also kind of a stellar nursery. Stars are being born there. So here's a piece of the Pleiades. All kinds of stars here, but a lot of really bright ones. But you can count 7 major ones because of the 7 sisters. So it's called an asterism. It's a constellation inside a constellation. So like the teapot in Sagittarius is an asterism. The Hyades cluster, or the V inside of Taurus, is an asterism. And so Taurus actually has a couple. There's Pleiades, Hyades, and then the overall Taurus constellation. But yeah, there are a bunch of, like, Big Dipper is also an asterism, because the Great Bear, the Big Bear, has a bunch more stuff coming off of the structure of the Big Dipper. So Big Dipper is just the most obvious part of it. So most people just call it the Big Dipper, but it's actually part of Ursa Major. So there's a little bit of Pleiades. Several of the more brighter stars. You can see some kind of off screen a little bit down to the right. It won't fit on here, like I said. It's pretty big. So I can do like a slow slew through here. You can see more of it. Quite a bit of it. Now again, we're not getting nebulosity here because this camera's just not doing it. It's just too automatic. It's not letting you boost anything to show other details. But let's go back. Now you've seen that. Let's go to the side. Oops. And go look at the moon. Okay, there's the Pleiades. Nice terminator on the moon. That's cool. Okay. Let's see how poorly this handles the exposure. You can see the Earth shine really well. Look at that right there. You can see the part of the moon that's naked eye, just black. But because the exposure here is so crazy at the edge, you get all the earth shine overexposed by this auto camera on YouTube. So if I slowly move in, it should change. And you get a nice view of the terminator, which is that dark line on the moon. Hopefully it overexposes for a bit and then it corrects itself. So you can actually see. There we go. If we go more toward the bright side, you'll see it exposure correct. And now the earth shine will go away, kind of. Still way too overexposed. So times like this, you would use a stop down mask. I could try my hand. And by blocking some of the reflector, you actually get a nice rheostat effect on the moon. Go back to overblown. Here's where I can correct for YouTube's shit camera operation. We normally have a cardboard cutout, and you basically take the aperture of your thing, cover it up, and then cut a small hole, just enough to let the light through. So now you can see more of the details on the surface based on how much I cover up. It's pretty good. Now let's try this. Don't forget I can zoom. And the terminator is one of the coolest places to look on the moon, because you get all these grazing light craters. And I can focus too. There we go. Nice. Now it's a little windy and I keep bumping the scope, so you're getting a little bit of a, I can do a little more stop mask here. Get a little bit better contrast with my hand. Zooming helped a lot though, so zooming actually cut the light down quite a bit. So you can see the image is kind of swimming. There's still a lot of turbulence in the atmosphere, which is called what you call scene. The scene is a little bit unsteady. And this is pretty high up. This is 60, 70 degrees up. So not, zenith is 90 degrees straight above you. Still pretty high up in the atmosphere. It should look better. In fact, you're getting a little bit of, if I look at the naked eye, I'm looking at the moon right now, and I'm getting a bit of an ice bow. It's not your standard 21 degree halo where you can put, as you put your fist out at arm's length, that's roughly 10 degrees. The moon is basically about a degree across. And if you, on a certain night with the high altitude ice clouds and stuff, I think they're cirrus clouds that cause that, you get this famous thing called the 21 degree halo. And it's an ice bow. It's this massive thing. And if you measure it with your hand and whatever, you can actually see it's about 21 degrees. It's because of the geometry of the ice crystals bending the light and stuff. It's pretty cool. But this is a mini ice bow right now. You can't really see it because it's too magnified, but I can see it with my naked eye. So there's some moon stuff. Zoom across here slowly. I can slow down the slew a little bit so it's a little more cool looking. Look at all that stuff on the terminator. It's really fun when you get to zoom in even more and it's stable. You just get lost in there. Get a nice moon map and you just find all kinds of craters. They all have names. Some have really weird structures. Some have like spires in them. when you get that plume from the collision of material and it settles back down, just like you get with the crown splash in water. You get this little plume and you get these spires in the middle from the settling. And some of those act like sundials. So in the right time of year, or sorry, the right time of the terminator, the month when the phase is going through, you can find little things that act like sundials in the valleys of the craters. There's some nice, that's a rill right there, that long white line. That's actually like a mountain range. So you have valleys, you have little canyons, you have tiny little craters, huge craters. It's really fun to study the moon. And even in like $100 department store telescope, just a piece of crap, this stuff looks amazing. Look at all that detail down there. So cool. I think I'm maxed on the zoom. Let's see. Yeah, I'm maxed out. So you have all of that, and if I go down here into the terminator side, you can usually see some other stuff. A little bit. The fun thing about you see all the different, the zigzagginess of it, because the peaks and valleys and the craters are all different heights, so it's not a clean line. You get this little mountain range effect, and it's really fun because this edge of the moon is the same way. So some of the friends in my club, they'll sit there and do a transect. They'll actually pick a line that goes north-south, and they will have a stellar grazing event where a known star from our point of view is going to literally graze the edge of the moon. And as it does that, it disappears behind little mountains and peeks through little valleys, just like when the solar eclipse and the sun, you get the thing called Bailey's beads. As the moon is starting to go across the sun and cover it and then start to leave, you get little valleys where the sunlight peeks through and forms these little segmented areas because of the irregularity of the edge of the moon, not just this part of the moon you're seeing here. So these guys in the stellar grazing event, they'll have a time signal, and they'll just sit there with a radio and a time signal along this transect line, and that all at the same time they're just going in, out, in, out. They're calling into a speaker, into a recorder. Somebody has to take all that data, transcribe it into a chart, and they could basically plot that chart and get a mountain range edge of the moon plotted out from measurements they took on Earth. It's pretty clever. It's called a stellar grazing. I almost did one once. I forgot about it. I missed it. But all those little fun events you can get involved in. So I go back over here again. You can see some of those really smooth, shallow craters there. Some are very bright, some are very light, some are very dark. They look smooth, but of course you're up close, they're not smooth. That's just our vantage point from here. And of course all the stuff you can't see where all the moon missions landed, because the craft are so small. The smallest crater I can see right here is still really large. So there's a famous crater, small crater they studied called Cone Crater. One of the Apollo missions, I think it was Apollo 10. And this is before they had the buggies, the moon buggies. And so they had to hand carry experiments on different parts of the moon. And some they had to leave, so they had to hand carry them so when they blast off the stage to go back up into orbit, they don't contaminate the experiment with the fine dust, this thing called regolith. It's really fine moon dust. so the guys had to do, in their suits, had to hand carry this damn thing in one direction. And then in another direction, they went to study Cone Crater. While they were there, they said, hey, let's go check out Cone Crater. And then they came back to the thing and they took off. Well, when they did this Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter about 3-4 years ago, super high-res flyovers of the moon. Low altitude, high-res, never taken before, just super high-res stuff. And made a beautiful high-res map that you can look at online anytime you want now. And some friends who are way into this stuff, and some of them work at NASA, and this isn't their free time. They were just having fun looking at the images they got. Some of them are Photoshop savvy, and I said, hey, I'm going to take some of these pictures and I'm going to contrast the shit out of them and see what I can see. What kind of details can I see? You know, unsharp mask and all that stuff. And they found all the hiking trails that the astronauts left as they did those hiking treks out for dropping the experiment and dropping to do a little tour around Cone Crater. They made a whole loop around Cone Crater. And in these images, they found the hiking trails of the astronauts. It's pretty awesome. So all these people say we didn't go to the moon, they're just completely insane because there's evidence for it everywhere. There's even the lasers they put on the moon to help study the distance. As the moon changes distance, we already know how close it is at any given moment because we actually bounce a laser off the moon. So, nice, look at that there. Just all pockmarked like some horrible acne. About as sharp as I can get right now, but not too bad. Let's see if I can contrast a little bit with my hand. A little more detail there, not so washed out. Oops. And what's really cool, if you've never seen, go look at pictures of the far side of the moon. They also have maps of it too, if you want to study all the parts. Because the pictures are hard to see all the details. And the moon really saved our asses many, many, many times because so much stuff that was bound for Earth, and because it's basically, you know, the way it's locked around the Earth, just happened to protect us just right. Because the far side is always the far side. We don't ever see the far side from here. There's a slight shift left and right, but generally you'll never see much of anything past the Mare Orientale and Mare Crisium and all this kind of stuff. These the dark areas they call seas or mare, because they thought, you know, the old days they thought they were oceans because they were dark. They're just dark lava fields that just were different colors back when the moon has geological activity. And anyway, so some of those, there's one called Mare Orientale, and it looks like a bullseye. And it's kind of, you can barely see the edge of it on the moon sometimes, but occasionally you see a little bit more of it because the moon wobbles a little bit. But essentially, we never see the dark side of the moon. And if you go look at the pictures of it, you go, holy shit, it's literally solid craters. Craters upon craters upon craters upon craters, because it just, that moon saved our asses from so much bombardment. It's pretty nuts. I'm gonna mouse that out again, it's getting crazy. Yeah, let's go up here a little bit, see. Oh man, the breeze is kicking up, it's getting cold. Let me get a few more minutes, I'm gonna call it. But look at all this shit here, that is so cool. There you go, getting more masking so you can see all those details there. Look at that. There's some of the dark areas. See the Mare right there? So like there's Mare Tranquillitatis, the Sea of Tranquility. That's where one of the Apollo missions landed. And I used to have them all memorized, but I forgot. I used to study the moon a lot when I first got a little scope. See some really bright areas there too, and some bright craters and stuff. Let's go up here a little bit. Catch the edge. See any interesting stuff here if I adjust the contrast. There are moon filters too, so if you're using eyepieces, you can do all this stuff. Polarizers and stuff to help enjoy your. Even color filters can be nice sometimes. It's false color, but you know, like red or yellow or green sometimes give you an interesting look at different features of the moon. Oops, wrong way. Let's go back this way now. There's a really bright crater there. I used to know these two. So Copernicus and Kepler and Aristarchus and Tycho and a really nice one called Plato. So yeah, you can see all that. And of course there's the famous man in the moon. If you get the full moon and you look at it, it looks kind of like a guy's face. Or there's the rabbit too. There's another. If you go, next time you see the full moon, see if you can see the rabbit. That's another one people look at. It's like a rabbit in profile. So yeah, there's the moon. Good stuff. Nice one to finish on. So thanks guys for hanging out as usual. Way more of these to come, just with much better cameras and stuff. Yeah, I'm glad the moon showed up. I wasn't expecting it tonight. I didn't plan this evening. I usually have an object list to look at and stuff. We've got all planned out. The moon's funny because it's in the same place 50 minutes later every night. So, because you have, sidereal time, which is star time, and then there's synodic time, which is the lunar time, and it's 24 hours, 50 minutes, basically. So it's always off by 50 minutes. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know why I remembered that, but one little stupid tidbits from a long time ago. So yeah, time to break this down and go get warm, because normally I'd be hot now or sweating in the summer, but it's fucking cold out here now with a breeze. So one last look with the stop mask here with my hand. Get a little bit better contrast. It's all washed out there. And good stuff. Hey Dave, you're just in time. I'm going to end the stream. It's getting cold out here. We actually got some cold weather tonight. Some breeze. And it was fine for a while, but I've been out here for a few hours. So, but yeah, I go back and watch. I do a bunch of moon stuff. Got some shots of Jupiter. There's even, when I was looking at something, I think it was when I first put Jupiter on there. There's even a meteor that goes through the shot. And before that I had a double star called Eta Cassiopeia. And before that I had Saturn. Started out with Saturn, because that's the only one I knew was up when I started playing with it tonight, and didn't even plan on looking at Jupiter and the moon and other stuff. So got lucky. And even though it's a crappy iPhone, I mean it's a good iPhone, but iPhones are limited, especially with YouTube software. It actually turned out okay considering. So once I get the better camera set up, this will be so much better. The live will be better, as well as the actual captured images, so I can look at fainter objects. So you can wait like 15, 20 seconds, and then boom, there's a shot, and you go, whoa, what is that? So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be a lot of fun. So good stuff. All right, guys, I'm going to call it. So hang in there, peace out, and As one of my favorite goofy astronomer guys who finally died, who's running a planetarium. I think it was in Miami. The Star Hustler. He would always end his shows with, "Okay, everybody, remember to keep looking up." So, keep looking up, everybody. Or as they say with the aliens, watch the skies. And catch you later. See you guys.